In this video, we're going to cover the functions of Octopus. Octopus is a USB MIDI to ART interface plus a voice manager. It covers a lot of ground, so we will try to go to as much as we can on this video, though there'll be things that we would recommend you to read on the user manual. So let's get started. On powering up Octopus for the first time, the displays show Mono 8, and we're going to go first over the features on the front panel to understand how to connect it. So as an input, you can go with a computer, for example, into the Midi connection here via USB, or you can use any hardware sequencer that you have or a hardware keyboard and connect it through what's called the DIN connection, Midi in. You can also use both of them. However, each one will need to be set to a different MIDI channel so they can control different ART channel on the outputs, which we'll get to in a second. We can see that there's 3 columns here of jacks, and there's 8 rows. So if we look at those rows in details, we can see that we have ART out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. We have velocity 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 8. And we have 8 trigger outputs. To understand how they are mapped, we need to understand that Octopus can have different modes of how things are connected and how it drives the devices that it's going to drive. But generally speaking, each output corresponds to a MIDI channel coming on the MIDI in. So for example, if I'm in Mono 8 mode and I'm having MIDI channel 1 sent on either the USB or the DIN, I'm going to get the signal coming out of ART1. And if there's any more controller like velocity built into, for example, I'm using a keyboard, I will have the velocity available on that as a CV. That's a 0 to 5 volts CV coming out of velocity 1. And that's true for all the other channels. So as long as we are on Mono 8, each output here is going to correspond to that MIDI channel. So for example, if I'm setting out my computer to, let's say, MIDI channel number 5, then I'm coming out of ART number 5 and velocity number 5 if I'm using velocity. I can also use modulation wheel. I can also use controllers to go out of the velocity. There's many ways. Again, this is something to watch out in the user manual. The drum section is kind of separate, although it's in the same rows. As you can see by those lines, it's a separate function. These triggers or gates are coming only on MIDI channel number 10. That means that we have mapped all these outputs to different notes on channel 10 on your MIDI device. So if I was using a keyboard right now, I would set it to channel number 10 and I would start playing some notes, and you will see that it will flash those LEDs corresponding to gate or triggers coming out of those outputs. We are calling it a drum trig channel 10, as we are thinking it will be mostly used for triggering drums. However, it can be used to drive sequencers or synchronize LFOs or just about anything that has a gate input. If we move to this section of Octopus, we are seeing 2 jacks here, clock out and reset out. These are taking start, stop, and MIDI clock from your computer or your hardware sequencer and are used to synchronize your Eurorack sequencers. So for example, if I had a circadian rhythm, for example, sitting right here, I would go from the clock out into the circadian clock in, from the reset out into the reset in of the circadian. And whenever I'm going to hit stop on my computer, it's going to stop my circadian. When I hit play, it's going to reset it and synchronize it to the timeline of my computer. The timing here can be set in menus to meet the clock type of your sequencers, as there are different types of sequencers on Eurorack. Some of them using 16th notes, some are using 48 part per quarter notes. There's a variety of formats, and all this can be dialed in through the menu. To update the firmware of Octopus, you would need to use an SD card formatted to FAT32. You're gonna download an image file, which it says image.hex, and you're gonna drop it into the card. You're gonna put it in. You're gonna turn off the system. You're gonna hold down this button, turn it on, and as soon as this button starts flashing, it will start update the firmware. Now let's try to go through some of the menus here and see the things that are important, at least for starting with Octopus. So as the module turns on for the first time, as I said earlier, it turns on mono 8, meaning that each of those channels are independent. Now mono 8 doesn't mean that the output from this art is always going to be monophonic. It can also be polyphonic. However, it means that each of those channels is separate. However, if we go to settings and we start scrolling through the menus, we can see that we can change the configuration of those channels. So I click on settings, it brought me to this menu, and I click on the encoder, and this allows me to change. So now I change to poly 3. Poly 3 means that I can go from all these 3 art output as a group to 3 oscillator and play chords in a discrete polyphonic patch. And those outputs 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 will still stay as mono outputs. There's poly 3, there's poly 4, there's poly 6, and there's even poly 8 for those of you who really want to go crazy and build a complete discrete polyphonic synthesizer. To step out of the menu, after I adjust it, let's say we're going to go back to poly 3, I can click on setting and I'm back out. When I'm going to play notes into the device, I will see the notes playing on the lower row. This is not showing now as I'm not got nothing connected. And let's keep scrolling through the menu and let's see what else we got here. So I'm going to click settings again. So this was the channel configuration we've been through. The next one is clock. That defines what's coming out of the clock output and reset output. In this case, it's called DAW, and that means it's a high resolution clock signal. And again, you will need to adjust it based on your sequencer needs. Your sequencer is 16th notes. You will need to set it up for that. Next in the menu is channel 10 map, and that's how the notes are mapped to those output, the trigger outputs. There's 2 options here. We won't go into details about this, as this is pretty simple. The next one is how we define these output, the velocity output. So right now, as you can see, this says CV out number 1, which refers to this one, is set for velocity. If I click, this turns red. I can go and change it to negative velocity. I can change it to wheel, modulation wheel. I can change it to a key. I can change it to a negative key. I can change it to take pressure. And then, for example, I can go on my computer and draw all kind of curves and use the pressure controller, and that will come out as CV on this output. And we're back to velocity. Now, it's possible to do that to all the channels. Let's go again into the menu. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay, 8. And the next thing is we are going to glide. We can send glide information that is built with the pitch information to the oscillators. In this case, I can set up output number 1, that refers to the ART1, a glide value. You can click and start adding glide, and you will hear how the oscillator are receiving that effect. Okay, going to go down, get out, and we can do that to glide 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 8. The last one in the menu is the version. Version is important so you know if you are running the latest firmware on Octopus. It's worth checking once in a while on the website, on the Tip Top Audio website, to see that you are right on the latest version. All-off is a function that is used in case you have notes hanging. That happens if, for example, an oscillator received a gate on command but didn't get a gate off command for whatever reason, and those notes are just open. You go to all off, you click on the button and you turn it, and it says send. It means it just sends a note off commands to everything, and everything just turns off. Once you go out of it, you are back in normal mode. Autotune is used to send Autotune commands to your analog oscillators. It's very handy if you got them all connected already to Octopus. You have a whole setup, a song, or you're in a live set. You can just go on Autotune and just says tune now. Click again and it will send an Autotune to all the art output commands. All the oscillators that have built-in tuning capability will Autotune themselves.